Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I'm excited for my conversation today with Katie Tomaszewski. She is a 15-year advocate for holistic health and transformative wellness. In 2018, she introduced Dynamics, a highly effective body-centered sobriety method addressing the full body experience of craving. Using temporary sobriety, Katie gives individuals in healing the maladaptive physical responses of their nervous system. When we are more in alignment with our internal state, we have more confidence in our decisions. We take bigger risks and live bigger lives. Welcome to the show today, Katie.
Hi, Felina. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I am really interested in getting into what you're doing and how you are helping people with Dynamics. But before we do that, I want to go back and talk a bit about your career path before you started the business. You've been an entrepreneur working independently about 6 or so years. Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. So you weren't born an entrepreneur.
No.
So I see you went to college, and you studied applied health science at University of Illinois, Chicago. Talk to us about that decision to go into health and wellness, and then we'll touch on your career in hospitality and how that ties into what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I actually changed my major many times. I was in my undergrad for 7 years. And I finally decided on nutrition and health sciences because I just wanted something that I knew I'd use. By the time I was getting done, a lot of my friends had already finished their schooling and maybe they weren't using their undergrad. So I thought, well, if I don't use this professionally, I'll use it in my real life. So that's great. So I'll study health. But what I didn't really realize, which is kind of wild until I was in it, was that what I was studying was much more of a clinical approach. And what I was wanting was much more of a wellness approach. So it was an interesting thing. I completed my degree and I actually had my daughter towards the end of that. And so I didn't move forward with becoming a dietitian because I needed to just have some time with her, and started teaching Pilates as an offshoot from that. And that's where the wellness arm of my experiences began.
Awesome. Let's talk about your time in hospitality. I want to touch on that as it relates to what you saw in that industry and perhaps what drove you to do what you're doing now.
Yeah, I had a lot of varied experiences in hospitality starting at the age of 18. I worked in hotels. I worked in a lot of restaurants and really learned so much about service in general and professionalism and just how to communicate and sell. And when I got into the fitness world, I definitely felt like that was an advantage, that I had that comfortability with talking to people and encouraging them to make purchases and to go for that transformation, and also to really help them feel cared for from the moment they walked in until the moment they left. Like the whole experience was always really important to me. And that is definitely from my hospitality background.
And my experience working in restaurants, also when I was a bit younger, was not everybody's always super healthy in that environment. And especially as it relates to alcohol, right? There's if you work at night and you stay late and you hang out and you go out, that's part of the culture.
Oh, definitely. It's a huge part of the culture. And not only do we encourage like we want to sell alcohol because that's where you make the most money. So I was really pushing folks to get that second bottle of wine and all the things. And then of course, at the end of the shift, you want your turn, and it's already midnight, but you stay up and have drinks until 2, and you get up the next day and dust yourself off with 4 cups of coffee and do it again.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so let's get into your career path a little bit more here. You started teaching Pilates. You've been, it looks like, very engaged in that community. How did your work there start to inform what you were doing in relation to health coaching and specifically this concept you came up with back in 2018, Dynamics?
Yeah. Well, I had a really great opportunity in where I trained for Pilates was a school. And so as I taught there for 7 years, I was able to mentor like 20 teachers as they were coming through. And so I had a lot of opportunities to really have a varied experience in that space. And I knew that I wanted to coach health and wellness on a deeper level because I had really learned a lot about connective tissue, fascia, the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and how to work with folks in a mindful way so that they would be able to build strength without injuring themselves. Or if they were coming in with a lot of injury, which happens often in Pilates, how to navigate that, because there'd be a lot of fear with movement and fear in their bodies. And so there was always an element a little deeper than calling choreography for me. It felt like it was coaching. So I wanted to take some of my Pilates clients through a chronic pain journey, an exploration. And I was talking about it a lot, and really nobody was interested. But in order to create that first program that I was hoping to get people involved in, I had decided to give up my alcohol habit. And looking back, I definitely drank more than the average bear. But at the time, I didn't feel out of control, but it just was every single weekend, like nonstop. And then I wouldn't really have much energy to do more than what I needed to do. I had a little girl, and I had my my work, and I had all these ideas, but not much room to get going on them. And so Dynamics was actually born out of my clients' interest was in my ability not to drink versus this chronic pain thing. Funny enough, I built Dynamics on a lot of the same principles that were included in my chronic pain course. It just kept growing. People wanted to get in on this magic that was the recreational sobriety, as one of my first clients coined it. So yeah, that was the birthplace for the coaching.
So interesting. Yeah, I mean, especially coming through the pandemic, I think for a lot of us, I'm sure you saw a lot of that. We were locked up in the early days. I've read quite a few stats on alcohol consumption and habit. You use the word habit, and that rings so true for me. I myself got into a habit, right? You come home, you pour yourself a glass of wine. It's a ritual, right? And I think we kid ourselves sometimes thinking like, this is normal, right? This wine's good for you, right?
Yeah. It's a health food. That was
there you go.
Very popular one singular study in the 90s that just got like blew up all over. And I think 2020 did a special, and it was like, red wine is good for your health. It is not. It never has been. It's a class 1 carcinogen, and it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Like, I'm not somebody that I'm not judging, and I don't think that people can do whatever they choose to do in whatever forms that they'd like to do. But what I don't like is this misinformation about what it is that we're doing, sort of like our food system. Like, hey, sometimes we're going to make whatever choices we want to make, but it's it's unfortunate that there's so much trickery involved and people are thinking they're making a good decision and they just don't have the information accurately presented to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it a little further here. I was reading some of the glowing reviews that people wrote that have been through your 3-month program and what it did for them. What is the program exactly? Kind of take us through it as if we were a client coming to you.
Yeah. So we start with the Dynamic January, and that's the detox. And that's open for folks who just want to take 30 days off and go a little deeper than counting the days by yourself and just kind of waiting for the clock to tick until February 1. So it's an opportunity to show up and get a touch of that body-centered approach. And what I mean by that is, rather than focus on exactly how many days you've got or what your record is with not drinking, we're focused on the feelings that are coming up. We're focused on how your body is interacting with this new choice. In the first couple weeks, it's like cuddle in, stay home, let yourself detox, because even moderate drinkers go through night sweats and cravings and all kinds of things, mood swings. So it can be intense. So we kind of cuddle in. And then as we get detoxed, I encourage people to start coming out of their shell and exploring environments with some new guidelines to start getting their body used to the discomfort of not having alcohol in environments that you're used to having alcohol. And then that month goes really fast. And a lot of people decide to do the 3-month program after that, which was my original model, was the 90 days. And that's where we go deeper. That's where you're like, I actually really like this and I want it to stick. But a month just wasn't quite enough for me to change my life over enough to feel like I can do this on my own. And we meet weekly for strategy session, a dynamics peer support session. We also meet for meditation and breath work. And all of these spaces are not only for the practice of meditation and breath work to help you build stress tolerance for those tough moments, but they're community support spaces. So it's a lot about coming together and sharing and just being in it with one another. 3 months without alcohol, some deep stuff happens. Some relationships might shift. Sometimes people change jobs. A lot comes up, and it's really valuable to be there with others. From there, if you want to keep getting supported, there's an option to stay through the end of the year in the graduates program. And we continue with a weekly meeting, and it just keeps getting deeper, and you just keep getting more confident in your choice not to drink, and also with what comes with that, which is big changes in your life to support that choice. So it's what you want it to be. You know, we have the detox for those that just want to dip their toes in and maybe take it a little lighter for a few months. Some people do end up giving up alcohol for very long periods of time, for years after that month, but it's really meant just for the detox, for the cleanse. And then they can go a little further, or they can say, hey, I want this. I want my identity to be a non-drinking person. And they get supported through the end of the year.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I want to talk about a few things here. Number one, I think most folks are familiar with AA, right, as a program. And I've had several friends who have gone through and continue to get support through those channels. What is AA getting wrong? Or what are they missing? What are they missing? What are they missing?
Okay. I want to just disclaimer, anyone that's using AA and you find it supportive, like, yes, keep on. AA is very different meeting by meeting and region by region. So I can't speak on AA as a whole.
Yes.
But I do know that it's one way. And there's a lot of people who aren't getting help because they think that's the only way, and they don't want anything to do with that. What some of the reasons I've heard are the spiritual religious component. That's something that's tough for some people. The idea of counting your days. At day 1, you're at full sobriety and you have to admit that you're powerless to alcohol and that you're addicted to alcohol. There's a lot of people who don't feel powerless or addicted. However, they're still needing support. And so there's some of the principles in AA just don't work for people. And it can feel, I think there's an image out there of a I don't know how to say this. It just feels somber. I think there's an image of like, welp, you're diseased, but we'll accept you here, and you're going to have to trudge through every day, day by day, and you're going to get it. And that works for some people. And by the way, I don't think that's how AA is in actuality, but that is what people who drink have told me. That is the imagery that they have. And I had that too, to be honest. I didn't choose the AA route. It didn't seem like it made sense for me. Yeah. So there's this large population of people where it doesn't fit in, but I'll tell you where they have it right. And that's the community. That is their strongest point, is the community of AA is what is their greatest strength. And anyone could benefit from that, even if you don't necessarily agree with AA's foundational principles.
Yeah. And what I also admire about it is the concept that at some point you're asked ideally to then turn around and help somebody else as well.
Yes.
Right. And sponsor someone. So I think that's an interesting facet. Do you, Katie, do in person? Do you do Zoom? Do you do both? How do you run these groups?
Dynamics is 100% virtual.
Okay. Great. Awesome. And then I want to get into this cold exposure piece. I think I saw you jumping off a dock in one of your videos online. So what is cold exposure? Why is it important?
Yeah. So this is where it's like, how do all these pieces come together under dynamics? So cold exposure is one of the most effective things you can do to help a nervous system that's maybe a bit unhealed. And what I mean by that is when you feel a way that doesn't match the situation, right? You walk into a dinner, you sit down, everything's lovely, but you feel some kind of bad way because your nervous system isn't used to you not getting that reward of the drink. And so your body's tightening up and your heart might be beating a little faster and you're distracted, and it makes the experience not fun. And so it's true that after enough dinners without drinking, you're going to stop having that feeling. But you can use cold exposure to boost your confidence in those moments when you start to get the sensations in your body that you want to leave or order a drink or whatever that looks like for you and how you want to remedy the situation. You learn to stay with yourself and wait. So cold exposure can look a lot of ways. It can be jumping into a lake on a cold day. It can be turning your shower all the way to cold. It can be getting in an ice bath, and they're all valuable and they all take, you see a lot of benefits for about 2 minutes. 90 seconds to 2 minutes is when the most benefits for your nervous system and your body are going to take place. So it's interesting because an emotion physiologically also lasts 90 seconds. And what I mean by that is when you have an emotion and there's something like your face gets red or your breathing changes or you get goosebumps, those physical effects will last 90 seconds. So there's a real interesting tie-in with maintaining your peace through these upsets that come through your body. And sobriety is such an amazing tool, much like cold exposure. You use the cold exposure to get better at being sober, but you use being sober to get better at being in life. You get better at those conflicts with your kid or those conflicts with your partner or that stress at work or that new client that's making you feel reactive. And all of these are tools to just make it easier to have courage to take risks and endure those very tough feelings that come along with that.
I can see that. I don't know that I could do it, Katie.
Everyone says that. Everyone does say that. They're like, but I don't like cold water.
I just don't like water at all. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's one of those things that I think you'll have an opportunity at some point, and it's so much worse in your head than the experience actually is. And you get out, and the feeling of conquering that is so profound. And there's another element that it just seems like the people that you meet in those environments are really great. And the way that this experience disarms everybody, it reminded me when I first started doing cold exposure after becoming a non-drinker, that it reminded me of being at a bar. Like everybody was just disarmed and shooting the breeze really easily because we're in this absurd, environment. And then we do this thing that's profoundly impacting our nervous system, which impacts how we connect with one another. We become more open. So I was like, wow, that's when I started doing events in Chicago. I'm like, people got to do this. Like, we don't need to have alcohol. We'll all be laughing and having a great time just because of the ice.
Yeah,
so
exactly. I love it. Okay. So Deep Line Health, why the name of the business? How did you come up with that? What does that mean?
It means, so there's a researcher, Thomas Myers, and he wrote a book called Anatomy Trains. And it's all about fascia. Are you familiar with fascia?
Yes, a little bit, but I don't know that I actually understand.
I know it's kind of weird. Like it's tissue. You could think of a piece of chicken breast, like the white film.
Okay,
That's fascia. But truly fascia is in all of our cells. And so even though that's more dense there and you could pick it up, like every little cell of that chicken has fascia in it as well. It's this massive communication web throughout your whole body. And it's part of your nervous system. So if you imagine from science class, your brain with the spinal cord and all the little spiky nerves coming off, but they're like just in space. Like, well, how does it tell? There's no nerve there. Like, where does it end? And the nerves are communicating with our fascia, and our fascia is communicating with our muscles. And it's this constant back and forth between our body and our brain and our brain and our body. And Thomas Myers identified a fascia line that he called the deep front line. And that fascia line, and he has a picture of a dissection in his book of the tongue through the throat, the myocardium of the heart, the diaphragm, the psoas muscle, down to the inner thigh, part of the calf, and the arch of the foot. So this is your deepest muscular body. Like all of that is part of a muscular body. And it's almost like a lot of it has elements of involuntary action, it feels like. And I was always fascinated with this deepest line of fascia when I was just solely teaching Pilates, because when you engage the foot and your psoas is in the right tone, and you're breathing and your heart is beating, you're going to feel a movement completely different than if you're using your surface muscles, right? We could lift a weight with our bicep, or we could lift a weight with our whole entire body. And activating that deep line or engaging with that deep line was the Rosetta Stone to get everything to work together. So that's where Deep Line Health came from.
Love it. Awesome. So Katie, talk to us about what you have coming up. I know you've got a program that kicks off in January. What else are you working on in the upcoming year?
So I have a fitness, a wellness program. It's called Forward Motion, and it's kind of like that deep line. It's a whole person, full body fitness program. It's designed really anyone that is needing support. They're really thoughtful 25-minute sessions. So they're designed to slide into your life and be multiple times per week. My heart song is for those who are dealing with injury, like maybe they have had knee surgery and things just haven't been the same since. That kind of thing. Love working with folks like that. So that is something that I've just been expanding, is that custom program. And really though, is Dynamics is where my mind is coming into the new year. So we'll be onboarding from now until January for that detox group, which is where people will start. And from there, they can decide if they want to go further.
I love it. Awesome. And if folks want to reach out to you, Katie, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would say visit the Dynamics website, which is deeplinehealth.com/2024. And take a look there. You can get on my email list on that page. Or if you want to go straight to my website, just don't put the 2024 at the end, and you'll be at deeplinehealth.com. And there's more information about things that are upcoming there. If you're local in Chicago, we have been jumping in the lake a little bit. So if that's something you're interested in, you should definitely get in contact with me. If you're in the Chicago area, I would love to meet you and have you there with us. And that's just a fun community group that is open to anyone.
I love it. Well, Katie, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed getting to know you.
Thank you, Felina.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.